So our topic tonight is what they don't tell you about church security. And we've been talking for the last few months about doing one webinar with an insurance background so that we can get some information from our insurance company. And so we've invited tonight Ken Dorothy from the American Church Group, also Brotherhood Mutual. And so he's going to turn on his camera and join us because he's going to be sharing over the next 45 minutes or so. And so we are excited that Ken can join us. And so I'm going to ask Ken to start his video. And we are going to jump and get started here. Hey, Ken, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we've been really excited about doing this webinar the last couple of months, and we just want we at our safety and security trainings, whether it's in person or online, we have talked a few times about liabilities and maybe some things we need to know from the insurance end that you might be able to shed some light on. And so we thought it would be great to have a representative. So tell us a little bit about what you do. And I'll tell you, I loved your little tagline that you specialize in insuring ministries. So that's always neat. So tell us a little bit about you, Ken, and then you can launch in.
Okay. Since 1981, I have been insuring churches and various ministries, including Christian schools and Christian camps. And that includes doing risk management with the churches, making them safer, as well as Christian schools and Christian camps. So it's an area that I've spent a lot of time with. I'm in churches every 2 or 3 times a week and talking about these subjects with them.
All right, well, that's great. So you have a great background, and we have a great relationship with Brotherhood Mutual, with the Baptist Churches of New England. You're our preferred provider. So again, we're glad that you're here with us. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to disappear and let you talk a little bit about what you want us to know about church security. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to monitor the chat. And so I'll ask questions as appropriate, whether you want to stop a few times throughout your presentation or wait till the end. I'll make sure we have questions for you to answer. How's that?
That sounds great.
All right.
Excellent.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Also, at the end of this presentation, for those who stay through the whole presentation, I have a free gift to give to everybody. So I'll tell you how to get that at the end of the presentation, okay? But today and tonight, I'm going to be talking about 3 areas of church security, and that is protecting the flock, protecting the youth, and protecting the building. So those are the 3 areas that I'll be talking about tonight. So protecting the flock. For decades, the church never even thought about such a thing. 2 or 3 decades ago, this wasn't even thought of. Church was always a safe place to go. You went there to worship, and it was just something that you always thought you were going to be safe, and security was not even an issue of going to a church. But today, it's a much different story, is that we take a look at some of the things that have happened, even at last month at Lakewood Church, on February 12th, 2024, a person went into Lakewood Church down there in Texas and opened fire and killed one person, and another person was wounded. We have the situation that happened in Texas before in Southland Springs, where there was 26 that died in a Southern Baptist church from a shooter that went in there and shot up people at the church. And then there was one down in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, where it's the same thing, where they go in there. And these were type of things that you never thought would ever happen. You know, church security just wasn't even an issue. And more today, things like this are happening. We see from the Lifeway research poll, they show up as having 38% of churches have no safety plan whatsoever. And 73% of churches have no firearms policy. That's one of the main questions I have when I'm talking to churches about security, is that they ask me, hey, should we have a firearms policy, or what should that be? What should that look like, and so forth. 22% of the churches have no security measures taken at all whatsoever. 5% of the pastors don't even know if they have anything themselves. So it's an important area. We can see there's more and more things happening with the local church, and it's important to address safety in the church. So now what I'm going to do is talk about some baseline, basic safety things that we could put into place in the local church to help us to become a safer place for our parishioners. And I call these commandments. And commandment number 1 is that thou shalt have a team approach. You know, it's not the type of thing where we have one person that has a gun and we call that, okay, that's our safety team. It should be everywhere from the people in the parking lot helping, you know, get people in the parking spaces. It should be the greeters at the door. It should be the ushers. They should all be trained to watch out for intruders in the church, and to be able to spot people that may have come into the church that they should be watching closely. So that is commandment number 1, is that it be a group effort and not just one person, a group effort. Commandment number 2 is that thou shalt have a organized safety and security ministry team. So again, is that it should be organized. It should be headed by somebody. It should be have regular meetings to it. It should have an annual training meeting, and it should have a plan that is developed, and this plan needs to be handed out to everybody in the group, and how each position is handled and trained to watch for these types of safety issues in the local church. Commandment number 3 is thou shalt lock the doors. This sounds very simple, but most churches, important doors are left unlocked. I know I walked into a church where the main door was fine, but there was one door that came in from the side parking lot. It was left open during the whole church service. Anybody could have walked in there, and it was easily accessed, and easily you could get into the congregation while it was going on, and it could be a problem. So make sure the doors that aren't being used, that they're locked, and during the service have only one door that's going to be unlocked for people to go in and out, and have that one main door. But all other doors, make sure that they're locked. Another thing is commandment number 4, thou shalt not focus on only the active shooter, because active shooter it's a very rare thing, even though we hear about them, okay? But it's more likely that somebody's going to have a heart attack, or a child being molested, unfortunately. So it's important to take in all areas of safety, and that way you'll be able to handle any situation that comes up in the church. That there are other dangers in the church, such as robbery, fire, health issues, and weather concern. Basically, we want to keep our church safe from all threats. And that's what we want to do with church safety. In commandment number 5, thou shalt have a firearms policy. One of the biggest questions I get, like I said before, is should we allow firearms in the church, or what should we do? And I always tell them, I said, look, at what you need to do as a church, you need to pray about it. And what God tells you is what you need to do. And so basically, I always tell them that that's what they need to do, is that they need to pray about it. But I find that many churches, in most churches, don't have any firearm policy, which opens them up to a lawsuit. So if somebody's using their gun and a church doesn't even know it, you can find that that does open up the church for a lawsuit. Commandment number 6, thou shalt work with your insurance company. The Bible says iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I am constantly amazed that many churches allow security and safety teams to carry firearms, but don't have them on their church insurance policy. The worst thing a church can do when it comes to firearms is guess. If your church would be a local church insurance company, reference, we would provide this for you. There are insurance companies that can provide protection for your armed security team for less than $200 a year. So it's not expensive at all. So don't do church security without your insurance company and reviewing it and having the proper coverage. Commandment number 7, thou shalt focus not just on response, but prevention. Many people love response training. I am one of them, of course, and I love firearms training. I love hands-on compliance training. However, many times these techniques are a response to a threat. What I love is prevention training. This isn't the most popular type of training because it can't be measured. However, prevention is where it's at. No replacement can be made for a trained parking lot team, ushers, greeters, security team who are trained not just to stop a threat, but to prevent a threat. Commandment number 8, thou shalt submit to leadership and laws. One of the biggest thing I hear is I feel I don't feel supported by the leadership. I am just going to do it. The Bible says in Romans 13:1 to submit to governing authorities. We can never do church security correctly if we don't submit to the church's leadership. It's important that we have the backing of the leadership of the church. And if you feel that, you want to go talk to them and get their backing in the security plan that the church has developed. And the leadership can help in developing the plan, reviewing the plan before it's even into place. So it's important to get their support. Commandment number 5, thou shalt make your safety team a ministry. The safety team is just as important as Sunday school, the worship team, and it is a ministry within the church. It's just important as all of the other ministries that go on there. So make the security team and ministry by making it fun, rewarding their efforts with small tokens of appreciation, having Bible study groups together, in committing to praying each time they meet. So that is very important. And then commandment number 10, thou shalt have training. So it's important, again, that we have training at least once a year with all of the people that are on the safety team, training them to do their job the best that they can. And we would never go to a surgeon, a pilot, a dentist service where they just throw something together. Church security can be about life and death. So it can't be just thrown together. It has to be something that is fine-tuned. In conclusion, just thank you for all those security teams that are out there in the churches. There's a good amount of churches that don't have anything in place. And so it's great for those churches that do and that are protecting their churches. And the hope for the world isn't found in the political party, but it's found in the Lord. Your ministry of church security is just as vital as worship, teaching, fellowship ministry that will take place at your church this weekend. You're a servant of God, and thank you all for doing that. And those are the 10 commandments that put together to share with the churches on how to make their churches safer. Here are 10 easy ways to create a safer church this Sunday. 10 easy ways to create a church safer this Sunday. Assign roles. In an emergency, determine who's going to call 911, who's going to talk to the media, who's going to talk to the authorities. So assign roles, and also assign backup. Assign backup. The second thing you want to do is identify trained professionals within the membership. Look for trained medical professions. You want to look for former law enforcement officers, members of the military or security backgrounds. So you want to look for those people in your congregation. Invest in two-way radios. You don't want to have a cell phone where you're trying to call somebody. That just doesn't work. You may have a dead area. You might not have the phone numbers. It's certainly much quicker if you just have a two-way radio and the security team having the two-way radios. So invest in two-way radios. That way you'll be able to relay information quickly. Also create a single entrance into the church. And we talked about this before. So we want to create a single entrance into the church. So assign an usher or team members to lock doors once your service starts. Any unlocked doors should be actively monitored. All other entrances should be inaccessible from the outside of the church. Ensure that the exit doors remain unlocked from the inside. And then monitor doors and lots. So you should have a couple people in the parking lot walking around to make sure the parking lot is secure while the service is going on. And you should be having a person that's going around with to take a look at the unlocked doors, another person at the unlocked doors. So that's basically the 5 ways that you can make your church safer by this weekend. I'm going to stop here and Sandy, has there been any questions on this here? I saw things popping up,
Yeah,
but
you know what I did? I did this for a couple of reasons. After the webinar is over, I am going to do a resource sheet with the information you shared, so that we can send it out to those that are listening. So that'll be good. But
okay.
I did. There was a couple of things I think that came out of this. First of all, somebody mentioned. So you had mentioned a firearm policy. Does, by any chance, on the Brotherhood Mutual website, is there a, like a template of that on there?
There is.
There
Uh,
is. Okay, and so
they
I,
do have a resource tab
yep,
that you can drop down on, and
okay.
you could go to that location and they'll talk about that.
Okay, and so I can send everybody those links. When I get the resource done, I'll send everybody those links. So, because
Right.
that'll be very helpful. So, so in relation to that, Ken, again, I'm well aware that, the active shooter isn't going to be the most important thing. So if they don't have a firearms policy in place, then there's a possibility that if something does happen and somebody uses their gun in the church, then the insurance company won't be able to help them if there's a lawsuit or anything like that.
That's correct. But anyone who has a gun, we need to be notified.
Okay,
What's going on. And we have a endorsement to the policy that we can put on there for security operations. Uh, Now, not all policies have that.
okay.
But ours is a church policy, and we understand that there are security measures happening. And so we have that endorsement that we could put on the policy.
Mhm. So that we have some states in New England that you can just carry a gun anywhere.
Mhm.
So if people's names don't show up on that policy, that's can be an issue.
It could be an issue,
It could be.
depending upon, what the situation is.
Okay.
Um, so what's the main thing is to put the endorsement on the policy.
Okay.
And to have that endorsement on there for security operations, not so much a name as having the endorsement.
Okay. And you say it's about approximately a couple of $100 a year,
Yes, it
depending.
is.
Okay. Okay. So
Right.
that's something that you have to ask about, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it's not something that your insurance, so again, this would be a good idea to look at your insurance policy and see what you have. Now, somebody also mentions, can they have insurance through USCCA in the event of involved shooting? Do you know anything about that?
No,
Are you aware? Okay.
United Church of Christ, um, UCCA. So it's the United Church of Christ, and I don't know anything about their policy.
Okay, so okay. And somebody else asked, does the endorsement list the names of armed security providers?
No, it doesn't.
It does not. Okay,
No, no.
okay.
That's
So
why it's important. That's why it's important just to have the endorsement on there.
gotcha, gotcha. So somebody clarified it's United States Concealed Carry Association. That's what that,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah,
So that has nothing to do with the
right.
insurance of a church, other than it has something to do with the insurance of the carrier themselves.
For the individual, correct. And
Right.
yeah, Walter put this in. He's told us about this before. Walter, can you put how much it might be? People might be interested in doing that. Right. Yes, it's nothing to do with USCCA is United States Concealed Carry Association, nothing to do with the church. And I'm going to see if somebody can put in the chat how much it might be per year. $39 a month. So, and I'm not sure what that covers, but you can,
Mhm.
certainly go on their website. So thank you, Walter. I knew he'd know.
Yeah,
Yep. So,
good.
and somebody does mention Brotherhood Mutual doesn't have, let's see, Brotherhood Mutual does not have a specific endorsement for security team operations in New Hampshire.
They don't say that again?
They said, yeah, somebody is saying that they don't. So you'll have to look into that. Maybe you could look into that. It says,
I will.
yeah,
Don't have a lot of business in New Hampshire, so
yeah. So he'll take a look at that. Maybe
yeah,
just, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and then somebody says the $2 million liability limit with the United States concealed carry. It covers lawyer and
Okay.
insurance. Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah,
Now, remember, is that on that particular thing is that the individual is covered, but
right.
not the church.
Correct, probably. Yeah.
So the church, any lawsuits that happen,
Mhm,
like somebody draws you a gun
mhm.
and they fire it and they miss the person and hit somebody else, then the church is going to have some issues if they don't allow guns or if they don't even have a policy of
Right,
having, you could bring your gun
right.
or that
Gotcha.
type of thing.
Right. So
So
it's
that's
good.
where could come in the problem. That's where the problem would come in.
Right. So definitely talk to insurance company. And so somebody said, tell him it's Phil. So you must know this person, Phil, who's asked that question. So he said, I work with Ken in sales leader in ACG New England. So
Yeah.
okay, so you know him. Okay. So somebody wants to know, Ken, what states are covered by your insurance? Because it's a national insurance company, correct?
Yes, it is. That's correct.
Okay, so all of the New England states, if you're in New England, you're covered, you might want to check with Ken. And I've got his contact information, so you can contact him outside of this webinar. So yeah, so definitely. Okay,
I mean, we are in all of the New England states,
right, I know
but
that.
not all the coverages may not be.
Right,
Um,
correct. Yeah,
you know, I know Massachusetts, Connecticut, uh, I believe Vermont and Maine, they all have the securities endorsement to it.
right. So again, it's a state by state policy. Everything's customized anyway. So it's always good. So we're only doing generalities here tonight. So
Right.
yeah, keep that in mind. Yep. So so if more people have guns in the church, will the cost be the same for each person carrying a gun? So is your endorsement, are there a number that, a specific number of people or not?
No, it would be the same. Doesn't
It'll be
matter
the
how
same.
many.
Okay, good stuff. All right, we'll keep putting your questions in there, and Ken, you can carry on with the next thing and we'll keep going.
Okay, very good. The
Good
next
stuff.
thing, the next thing I want to talk about is protecting your youth. Um, when we take a look at it, the Children's Research Center, they came out and said that 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 20 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault. 82% of the victims under 18 are female. Female ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, and sexually assaulted. It's important to know that as a church, that we are a mandatory reporting agency. So we must report anyone that we think is being assaulted or has been assaulted at a church event or on the church premises. So it's important to realize that it's against the law if we don't report it. So even if it happened somewhere else other than the church, and the child is brought to church and it looks like they've been abused or sexually abused or whatever, and the government expects us to report that immediately to the Department of the DCF, Department of Children and Family. So it's important to watch for that in our local churches. Now, protecting our children is that, first of all, when we put these things in place, which are very simple, it really brings down the any sexual acts from happening, any sexual misconduct from happening at the church is brought way down to only 80%. It really brings it down to so that only like 20% chance of it anything ever happening. So the first thing would be to, number one, have a written plan. So it's important for us to have a written plan, and you could find sample plans on the Brotherhood Mutual website. They have them there, and you could take a look at a plan, what they look like, and design it to fit your church. The other thing is that things that you want to watch for is there we are. Something went kind of screwy on my computer. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty. But we've all heard is that you never want to be alone with a child. You always have two adults, one child. You know, the that ratio of two adult rule or rule of three people. So two adults and one child at all times, never alone with a child. You never want to be accused of something where it's their word against your word. The other thing is that you always want to do criminal background checks on employees. And this is important when we look at employees, is that we should always be doing a criminal background check, but it should be a national criminal background checks. Now, Brotherhood Mutual has a couple that they recommend, and those background checks are even discounted if you're a Brotherhood Mutual policy holder. So background checks are very important. And again, I run into churches who don't do a background check on their pastor or secretary or person that's that they're hiring as an associate pastor or youth pastor, and it's important to do a background check. Use a volunteer application. Again, having an application, which is a volunteer, where they fill it out and it will have references to it, and you're able to follow through on those references, and also doing background checks on the volunteers. So also asking whether they've ever been involved in such a situation, because when we deal with sexual misconduct, they might have been accused, but it had never been brought to court. They had never been accountable in a court of law, and it will never show up on a background check. It will never show up. So asking them, hey, have you ever been accused? And for them to be able to have that question asked of them and answered yes or no on that. Another thing that you want to be careful of is the counseling, is that do you have items in place? Do you have a room in place that's going to prevent sexual misconduct? And I'm talking about having a room that has a glass window in the doorway. That way it's going to help from having any type of sexual misconduct happening there. So basically, we take a look at it, and we conduct criminal background checks on all volunteers that have access to children, youth, and vulnerable adults. We got the windows and the doors of anybody counseling. Should have a system on who is bringing in a child into the nursery, and you should have a system on who's picking up the child. You want to make sure the right person is picking up the child, and especially if it's a split marriage and all of a sudden you've got the wife dropping off the kids and the husband coming in and picking them up, and he wasn't supposed to. So it's important to have a correct dropping off and picking up of the children. So that is it on my protecting the youth. Is there any questions on that?
Always have questions here. So Ken, say a little bit about, so the background checks for volunteers. So at our church, we do them every 2 to 3 years. Because that's important to us. And when I go out and do training, that's what I recommend. I don't say just one and done. I say you should be doing it every couple of years. Is that a good policy?
We recommend that they should be done every year.
Every year, okay, so there you go. So your insurance company, and so is there someplace on on the insurance policy, if they're having those done, they get a discount, or anything like that?
There is. There's a form that they sign, that they fill out.
Okay,
And this form is outlining the things that I was just talking about.
yeah,
Okay, so they're answering, yes, we do that. Yes, we do that. We make sure no child's alone. We do the background checks. We do the counseling with the window and the door.
okay,
And so they're answering all of those items on a form, and then they're signing it. Okay. And for them doing that, they are getting a discount on the policy.
okay, good to know.
Okay.
That's good.
Because every one of our policy has sexual misconduct coverage on it.
Right, right. And I like the idea. I also recommend the application with the 2 disclosure questions. So in the
Yeah.
application, we actually have the questions: have you been involved in a prior sexual abuse,
Right,
confrontation or whatever. And then
right,
the other thing, to remind people online who are in Massachusetts, there's a national background check, which is important, but also the Corey check.
right,
And that's for the court system in Massachusetts. So in Massachusetts, you should be doing 2. You should be doing the national background check and a Corey. And it's better to do the national background check, again, because it's a wider sweep than a Corey.
right, right. And
So,
we just ran in a situation where the pastor of the church had been involved with sexual misconduct, and he was down in Pennsylvania. So, wouldn't show up on a Corey because that's only in Massachusetts.
that's
You know,
correct.
the
Right.
Corys are free of charge too.
Correct. Yes, that's
They
right.
don't, they don't cost the church any money.
Right. But it only looks in the court system in Massachusetts. And if you've never done anything in Massachusetts, then it's not helpful at all. So
Right.
you definitely need to do a background check that has national level. So
Mhm.
anyway, so that's good. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there are any other questions here in the thing, but yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Ken.
All right, all right. Okay, my last section here is securing the building. Okay, so we have the church service being over. The last potluck dish has been washed and packed away. It's now time to secure the church building before heading home, out of the ministry or a Sabbath nature hike. Every church is designated officials. They should have different people that usually the church deacon or elder of the week has a very important job, and that his responsibility is to secure his or her is to secure the local church building and all of its assets. And we use or recommend a 3-step checklist that we go through. Step number 1 is a perimeter check. So number 1 is that the person needs to walk around the outside of the building, okay, and take a look at, hey, are there any windows open? Is there any doors that are unlocked? And to make sure that they are secure and that they are locked. Also taking a look at things like the dumpster, and taking a look at any fencing, and just taking a look at the assets that are on the outside of the church. The second thing is that we take a look at the inside, is that we take a look at every room in the church, making sure that, number 1, everybody has left the church. Number 2, if anything's left behind, you want to put it in the lost and found. And of course, number 3, making sure all the windows are locked and taking a look at that. So it's important to have an interior check to make sure that they're all secure. So once the perimeter is checked and the interior is checked and is completed, the building is being checked for security systems, camera, if applicable. Yeah, so check basically your security systems, make sure that they're working and that everything is fine there. And make sure this security alarm system is working. Just look at that before you leave and lock up, and then you're all set to go. So those are the 3 areas taking a look at the facility. The last thing I want to talk about is that when you rent your facility to someone, is that it's important to get a facilities use agreement. And this is what I have here, is a facility use agreement, and a sample is on the Brotherhood Mutual website under resources. And this is something that you could take, and you can even just type it out and have it so that you can fill in the blanks anytime you have somebody that wants to use the facility. But they are to have their own insurance, and usually you would require to have them have $1 million of liability insurance, and you would want the church to be named as an additional insured, and that's what you would want. So this is an agreement that's going to hold the church harmless. If anything was to happen, you don't want to be pulled into it for something during their activities that goes wrong and it creates a lawsuit or anything like that happens. So again, the facility use agreement is a very important one to have. The last thing is you take a look at your different insurances, is that, the one thing you want to do is make sure you have the right amount of coverage on the policy. There are things that you have that you want to make sure you have enough of the building coverage, enough of contents coverage. So many times we come up in the church does not have enough of contents coverage. And that is basically, if you turn the church upside down, anything that falls out is contents, is personal property. So that's what you want to look at, is that what would fall out of the church if it was turned upside down, and what is the value of that? The pews, the stained glass windows, those are all part of the building. They don't fall out, and the pews are secured down to the floor. So anything that's secured to the building is not part of the personal property. So you want to check that and discuss that with them. The other thing is that the way you can save money on insurance, of course, is by increasing your deductibles. More and more companies are requiring increased deductibles, but remember, it's also reducing the premium and helping keep costs down. And that is about it. Sandy, do we have any additional questions right now?
Oh, yeah. Somebody's asking about weddings for non-members.
Um,
And the person may need to say a little bit more about that, because is that what's covered under a rental? So if you rent your church out to an individual for a wedding, is that something different than like if you let AA use your church or something like that?
that is something different. Is that usually people are not looking at a use agreement, a facility use agreement with a wedding, whether it be with somebody in the church or somebody that's in the church. So they're not doing it. If they're having a reception there, you might want to be looking at it, especially if they're going to be serving alcohol, which most churches don't, but some do.
Right.
And so then you want to look at, hey, for the event, you're going to have your own insurance and be named as an additional insured, the church be named as an additional insured.
Right. Because like at our church, if we go outside of our property and like have an event in a park, then usually the town will ask us for proof of insurance, a rider for that particular event.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. And they
So,
would require a certificate of insurance,
correct. Right.
and
Right.
they would want the town named as an additional insured on that.
Correct, right, right. So be aware of that. If you're doing things outside, you might want to make sure you're getting that certificate of insurance so that you are covered. So that's always good. And so in a lot of churches, to be honest, when it comes to weddings, they have a policy. And so again, if your church doesn't have a policy, they may want to think about a policy, because again, if you are having a wedding outside of church hours, you want to make sure you have safety and security there, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
So, you need to be, sometimes we think, oh, we only need our safety team on Sundays, but really, to be honest, you need your safety team there every time the church is open.
Right. That's right.
Is
Yeah.
that right? So, I think
Right.
that's why you need a team of people that can organize that and train, and the security team needs to be training your Sunday school workers what to do. So it's not just your security team that needs to be trained, like in sexual abuse issues. You need to be training your Sunday school teachers, your church leaders in those types of things, correct?
That is correct. That's
Yeah,
why they say church starts in the parking lot.
correct. Yep. Yeah. And one, I see somebody said their safety teams on site at any event, and I know several churches. But I think people are now becoming more aware that even if you have a prayer meeting on a Saturday morning, there needs to be somebody there that, you know, if a safety issue happens, somebody needs to be the person to, you know, call 911, tell people what to do, right? I mean,
Mm. Right, right.
yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
little bit more than that. Yeah. And I know people have been putting a lot of stuff in the chat. I appreciate that. And I'm going to compile all these documents, and I'll point people to the Brotherhood Mutual website. So that's great. That's great. Thank you. And I did put a lot in the chat, but we just want to make sure. So, and somebody mentioned cameras. Because isn't that would be also another way to, you know, secure your building, to have cameras?
Yes, more and more I walk into churches that do have cameras that would be, you know, recording for 30 days and that type of thing. And they are very useful.
Okay, so be aware of that. Yeah, that's a good point, you know, having them record for the 30 days, and you would have those available if you need them. So
Hmm.
would you need them any longer than 30 days, or do you know anything?
Not normally, I think things would come up, you know, although, you know, the microchips, I mean, you could get a lot on them nowadays,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
maybe keeping them.
in,
Okay.
in the,
Yeah. This person has said because of the cameras, it's helped them twice so far. So they were
oh,
grateful
well,
to have the cameras. So great.
good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well.
All right. Any other, this is really good, but boy, we, we went right down to the wire here. Ken,